The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and don't necessarily reflect the views of WOWT.
The history of Omaha is dead, but it's coming back. I'll explain what all that means in just a moment or two, but welcome to the latest episode of the Tom Becca Podcast, brought to you by the fine folks at Havana Garage in the Old Market. Havana Garage, where just a nice place to go, have a cocktail, maybe a cigar. You can sit outside on their patio or inside where they got the whole Rat Pack theme there with the nice wood and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Joey Bishop even. You know, I'm telling you, it really is. It's a cool little place to go in the Old Market. Been there forever. Cigars, the great selection of liquor, and whatever basically you like, okay? Stop on by. Tell them Becca sent you on the Becca's Talking podcast. It is Havana Garage. Okay, I said the history of Omaha is dead, but it's coming back. And Barb Naughton is here from the Prospect Hill Cemetery to talk about this. Now, people that don't know about Prospect Hill, it's Omaha's oldest cemetery, right?
Correct.
Okay. Tell me about it. Where is it and what makes this place so special?
So I want to first say that there are two Prospect Hill cemeteries in the Omaha area. One of them is in Elkhorn. That is not us.
Really?
Yes. That's a smaller cemetery. We are the original Prospect Hill Historic Cemetery. We are the oldest burial place in Omaha, and we are on the corner of 33rd and Parker.
Okay, before I get into that, just out of curiosity, is Prospect Hill and Elkhorn also a very old cemetery and that started about the same time?
No,
Okay,
not at all.
Then they're just copycats. The heck with them.
Well, you know, there are a lot of cities and towns around the country that have Prospect Hill cemeteries because the Prospect Hill was usually the highest hill in that town back in the day. And so you wanted your people to be buried on the highest hill, so they had the best view of the city. So that was called a Prospect Hill.
And it's on 32nd Street, right? Not far from where Malcolm X was born, right?
Well, that's 30th, and we're on 33rd.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very close. Our eastern neighbors is the 75 North Highlander neighborhood development. So it's done a lot for the neighborhood for us and for us as well.
Okay, so now I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this sort of thing. I do enjoy walking through a cemetery, you know, sometimes, and looking at the headstones and trying to figure out just what that person's life story was.
Yeah.
You know, when they were born, when they died, they're married, 3 kids, whatever, and trying to just put together a little picture in my own head. So, you know, most people don't do that sort of thing, though. But there is something about a cemetery that intrigues a lot of people. What is so special about Prospect Hill?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember about Prospect Hill is that pretty much all the founding mothers and fathers are buried there. Now, many of them were moved to Catholic cemeteries when Holy Sepulchre was opened. Some of them were moved at the opening of Forest Lawn, but really many, many, many of the founding fathers and mothers are there. The first person to homestead in Omaha, the first person to cross the river and establish residency. The founders of the banks and the parks and the streets, they're all there.
If you go walking through there, you mentioned the streets.
Yeah.
There's Poppleton, there's Webster. I mean, all these streets.
Decatur.
All these streets that we see the names of the streets, don't think about it. The people those streets are named after, buried at Prospect Hill.
Also schools and buildings in Omaha, named after people that are buried there. And parks, my gosh, Mr. Hanscom is there. Mr. McGeeth is there that helped Mr. Hanscom found the first public park in Omaha, which is Hanscom Park.
Okay, so I said that the history of Omaha is dead, but it's coming back. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said about that because Prospect Hill had been put in disarray, correct?
Yes. Back in the 60s and 50s, really it looked kind of like a jungle behind a chain link fence, honestly. It was very overgrown and neglected. And, you know, there was no real reason for it other than the fault of the way that the cemetery was set up in its founding days, and that was that the lot owners or the people that owned the plots where their families were buried were supposed to take care of the cemetery. Well, years and years, decades and decades and decades passed, and people forgot or didn't know that their families were buried there, or maybe they moved away. And so the cemetery went in disrepair. We stopped taking active burials in the late 60s, early 70s. And that also cuts down on any kind of income that the cemetery has, so maintenance was difficult. So in about the late 70s, a group of people formed an organization called the Prospect Hill Historic Site Development Foundation. And that was really the rebirth of the cemetery. So that was in the late 70s, and it's kind of been growing very slowly, but growing back to what it was originally supposed to be. And that was really like a park. It was like a park green space in the middle of this area of Omaha. We have 13 acres of a little over 13 acres of land and 15,000 burial sites. So it's a huge space. It's a huge space to go unrecognized and in disrepair for so many years.
Now, as I walk through there now, I see that a lot of the graves have got historical markers, not really historical markers, but signs.
Little black brown boxes.
Yeah, little brown boxes that tell the story of why this person is important, what this person did for Omaha, and that. Can you give me maybe a few of the stories that of people that are buried there and some of the stories behind their graves? Well,
I love to say that every grave has a story, and it's very, very true, especially with graves that are so very, very old. I mentioned McGeath. It's actually pronounced McGath. He is buried there with his family, and it's the only mausoleum in the cemetery. There's a story that his daughter, his daughter was a past queen of Exarban in the 20s, I think it was, and she died the day before her wedding of some kind of horrible disease that came on very quickly. And so he had this mausoleum created for her, and then the rest of the family members are buried there. He was, like I said, a prominent landowner and developer, kind of an entrepreneur in early Omaha. There's, of course, Anna Wilson, who is our famous.
I want to get to that, but we're going to tease the Anna Wilson story for later on in the podcast, because that really is. I mean, you know, we have this image of Omaha of being this good, wholesome, all-American Midwest town. Oh, shucks. You know, it's sort of a place where, you know, Wally and the Beaver would hang out and just sort of, you know, but Omaha really has got kind of a sordid past. And there's some really good stories there. And I'm fascinated with the Anna Wilson story. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But, you know, there was another story there of an explosion and some kids that were killed, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the 4 boys. It's the only mass grave that we have in Prospect Hill, and this is a tragic story. There were 4 boys who, I think they were playing hooky from school. It was about 1885 or 4. They were in there. One of them was 17, one was 15, one was 14, and one was 10. And they decided to go rabbit hunting or critter hunting of some kind in the afternoon on a bright spring day. And they were tracking critters. And there was a gunpowder factory down on about 9th and Pierce or 9th, somewhere in that vicinity. And I think what the story is that sometime late that afternoon, Omaha felt a huge explosion. They thought it had been an earthquake. And then they thought that one of the power plants or something had exploded. They finally found out that it was this gunpowder factory. And they found scattered remains of these 4 boys. They could not actually put the bodies all together. But the residents found various limbs or body parts and made a pile and decided as a community that they would put them in a mass grave at Prospect Hill.
It's
a very tragic and sad story, but it is a rich history. It is part of that rich history that Prospect Hill carries with it. So right now, we have raised funds and are continuing to raise funds. One of the things we're doing for our future, and I know we're going to talk about that, Tom, is to raise up and repair some of these graves that have been in disrepair for so long. That one in particular was made out of limestone. It had a tree next to it. Through the years, the weather, critters, and that tree kind of destroyed the limestone. So we have raised money and are continuing to raise money to have the monument replaced. We're going to keep the original monument there, but we're going to have a brand new replica right next to it and tell the story. And that particular gravesite, the 4 boys are symbolized by columns. It was very popular in the day. If someone's life ended before their, grown adulthood, that they symbolized it by a broken column. Those columns, there are 4 columns on this particular gravesite, each column a different height to represent the height of that kid, that young boy when he was killed. And so that's what we're having replicated by a monument company here in Omaha.
That sort of thing, you think about it, some kids out just playing, and it happened, and tragically things like that still happen today, maybe not to that same magnitude, but this was a story of, like you said, a gunpowder factory exploding like that, and with the tragic death of these young men, and it's memorialized there at Prospect Hill.
That's right.
Tell me about some of the other leaders of our, early days of Omaha, the people there that are buried there, and maybe some of the backstories to them.
Well, names that you might recognize are the Kuntz brothers, who actually founded First National Bank. The Buffetts, we have a few Buffetts there. Ernest Buffett, and he was of grocery store fame before his great nephew, I think Warren is, or maybe great nephew. Before the other relatives became famous. One of the most interesting areas of the cemetery that we have multiple graves is what we call the Omaha Barracks. Now, when Fort Omaha came into being, it was called the Omaha Barracks there on 30th Street, North 30th Street. And, that was a fort, so to speak, or a camp for officers and Army who were sent west to fight the Indian Wars after the Civil War. And the Omaha Barracks, which later became known as Fort Omaha, didn't have a burial site, didn't have a cemetery of their own, a military-designated cemetery. So when these soldiers came back dead from these Indian Wars, they asked Prospect Hill for an area to bury their dead. So we have a little section about in the center of the western side that's called the Omaha Barracks. Many of these little stones, they're not even like you would see at Arlington necessarily. They were just headstones, and many of them have sunk into the ground. We've had to have ground-penetrating radar to even find some of them. But we did have a generous donation a few years ago to reestablish and upright some of these crosses that were there. So that's an area right there in Prospect Hill that honors the military dead. Now, eventually, Forest Lawn was designated a military burial space for them, and so the rest of their soldiers were then buried at Forest Lawn.
Yet Prospect Hill does a big Memorial Day celebration. Absolutely.
We have hundreds and hundreds of veterans that are buried there. We have a Buffalo Soldier there that we're very proud of.
People may not know what a Buffalo Soldier is.
That's right.
Okay, what is a Buffalo Soldier?
A Buffalo Soldier was a freed slave or a free man that enlisted in the Army after the Civil War, and they went and fought in the Army They were scouts. They were just fantastic soldiers and fought many, many years in the Army as a designated unfortunately segregated group. But they were called Buffalo Soldiers because they were such rough and tough soldiers. And we have one buried and memorialized at Prospect Hill.
Now, someone like a Buffalo Soldier, maybe some of the other military people there, did they have Omaha connections, or they just happened to, when they died in service, and Prospect Hill was the closest one?
That's a great question. It's a little of both. We have a soldier there from the War of 1812.
Wow.
Now, that's our oldest person that's buried there, a veteran from the War of 1812. And the reason he's buried there was because he was old when he moved to Omaha to be with his daughter and her family, and then died here. So he was buried at Prospect Hill.
You said
So he fought in the War of 1812, and as an older adult, after that war, moved to Omaha.
Right, but okay, you say he was the first one.
He's from the oldest war.
Oh, from the oldest war. Okay,
from the oldest war.
Okay, so wait, when did Prospect Hill start?
1858.
1858 is when
Omaha was founded in 1857. So we're old.
Yeah.
Byron Reed kind of put us together. He kind of managed the property and a few others. And he, of course, has a very prominent, and if you've been in Omaha for a while, you knew the name Byron Reed for many years. He has a prominent place. Levi Carter is another one who has a park named after him and a lake. He's buried in a portion of the cemetery that overlooks, it's really at one of the highest hills, one of the highest points of the cemetery that overlooks Council Bluffs. You can see the river during the winter when the leaves aren't all leafed out. You can see the river. At the time he was buried, the story goes that he chose that spot because he could see his lake. He could see Carter Lake from there.
So Carter Lake was not named after he died. Carter Lake was named. Did he own that lake? Did he own property around there?
I don't know the history about that.
Well, why not?
I know. With 15,000 people buried there.
But again, when you go and you take a walk through there, is there like a handbook or something that somebody can go to find like where these people are, or do you just sort of like walk around and stumble across a gravesite?
We have a walking tour that's digitally published on our website. We, for years, have had pamphlets that people could get. They are out of print, and we would love to reprint them, but they are historically inaccurate, some of them, because they were written so long ago. And we don't have the funds right now to reprint and rewrite all of those. Digitally, people can go online and do our walking tour. There's also a company called History Walks that does, and Shannon does various tours of various cemeteries, the Bohemian Cemetery and a lot of others, but she does a lot of Prospect Hill walking cemetery tours. So you could look up her website as well.
I wanted people know, when you mentioned Fort Omaha, that's really the site now of the current Metro College, right?
That's correct.
They're on 30th Street.
30th Street. Mm-hmm.
That was
30th
Fort. That was Fort Omaha at one time.
Mm-hmm.
What is the appeal of a cemetery? You talk about walking tours, and I told you, when I was on the road traveling all the time, if I had some free time, I would go and I'd find and I'd just walk through the cemetery. And
Tom, did it give you kind of a feeling of? It kind of gives you a feeling of being amongst history. You're really walking through history that has come before you. You're kind of looking at people, getting to know people you didn't know. And if you know the story, it's even better. And if you have family that's buried there like I do, it's even better, because I discovered I had family there about 20 years ago, and it spurred me to do history research on those family members. And turns out that my great-great-grandfather was one of the first blacksmiths here.
Oh, okay.
So that's why, he was a prominent landowner.
I was hoping there'd be a really juicy story about the guy,
If there was, I wouldn't tell you. But, I said it before, almost every grave really has an interesting story, whether it's somebody, there's a story out there, and don't ask me the name because I don't know the names as well as Shannon does, but he was the bodyguard for President Lincoln. Came to Omaha, died here, buried here. There's just... almost any place you walk, you'll see, like you said, name of a street, a name of a school, a name of a building, a past state senator, or, Clarkson Hospital. The Clarksons are buried there. It's just that kind of place.
Now you say you don't new burials. You don't do new burials, but if, let's say, a member of the Clarkson family had died and they want to be buried there with their ancestors, if there was space, you would take them, right?
Yes, I could be buried with my great-great-great-grandfather if I wanted to, because there's space in the Karbach plot. So that is true with anybody. We just, not very long ago, we buried Poppleton, one of the Poppleton family, because there was space in their grave. So,
okay, we're going to get to the Anna Wilson story next, but I got to do a quick little comment there, if I can, about my fine friends over at Havana Garage in the Old Market. We talk about the history of Omaha. Well, the history of Omaha is also the Old Market, which, of course, was right there by Jobbers Canyon. And, a lot of history there. And Havana Garage has been around for a long time. Not quite as long as the Old Market and some of these people we're talking about, but they've been there for years. And you don't stay in business for years unless you got something good going on, and they do, at Havana Garage. Stop on by maybe after work, or maybe you got an event going on downtown. So much happening downtown these days. Make Havana Garage part of your evening. Havana Garage in the Old Market. Okay, so Anna Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, we talked about the history and all that. There's in the Old Market and downtown and all that. There's a place downtown called Wilson and Washburn,
mm-hmm.
which is a great little eating and drinking establishment. But I didn't know about Anna Wilson until Wilson and Washburn opened up,
mm-hmm.
and then I heard the story, and it was like, how do more people not know about this? Okay, so let's tell the story. First of all, who is Anna Wilson?
So Anna Wilson came to Omaha from the East, and she established a business here. And the business was entertaining gentlemen with ladies of the evening. Oh, come on,
she was a madam.
She was a madam.
Yep.
And she was a successful madam.
Yeah.
And her establishment, beautiful brick building, was about 10th and Douglas. The entrance had a very big veranda porch, and at the entrance of that porch were two statues of naked ladies. And so you kind of knew when you saw that building what it was. And I don't know the layout. There's a really excellent description about Anna and her business in Eileen Worth's book called The Women Who Founded Omaha, or The Women Who Built Omaha. It's really very interesting. I don't mean to plug her book, but
please do, yeah.
It really is educational about Anna and many, many of the women in Omaha that were really founders. So her establishment was very successful. There are rumors that there were underground tunnels from various business establishments that led to her underground led to her establishment, so that businessmen wouldn't be seen walking in there.
I love that. The story is that they could walk into the bank and look all prim and proper, get into a tunnel, go in Anna Wilson's place, spend some time there with the ladies, and then come back out of the bank going, oh, well, I took care of business, and be very prim and proper and all this.
That's right.
And then, by the way, that's something else for maybe another show sometime. But there were tunnels all throughout downtown Omaha back in the day.
That's right.
That was
probably
huge.
Not just for that purpose. I don't know.
No, I think there's also like bootlegging and stuff like that. I mean, there's
a shady history.
You talked about plugging books. Let me plug one.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's available. I know it's available out at the Durham Museum. And it's something like Omaha, a dirty, nasty town.
Dirty little town. That's by Orv Menard.
Okay.
He used to be on our board. He's
right.
a very, very well-established historian. He's passed away now, but that's a great book talking about the dirty little past that Omaha has.
Okay, so we got Anna Wilson now. The brothel was basically, if you're heading to Council Bluffs and going over the bridge, on the 480 bridge.
10th and Douglas.
If you're going over that, be where the Marriott parking lot is, right to the north of you, right before you get on the overpass, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, exactly. that's where it was, and it was a rather ornate building, right?
Very ornate, and I will say she was quite a businesswoman for her time, especially. And I'm not sure how educated she was. I don't really know her biography, but she was a huge benefactor to Omaha, anonymously most of the time. There were rumors that she was friends. Behind the scenes friends with Thomas Kimball's mother, Mrs. Kimball, and Mrs. Kimball helped her give her money away to various charities under anonymous ways or a different name perhaps. But she gave a lot of money to Prospect Hill.
Now, Thomas Kimball, that name rings a bell.
Yes,
but,
famous architect.
Okay.
And he designed the old library building that's still there. He designed St. Cecilia's Cathedral. Many great buildings in Omaha. Thomas Kimball, very talented.
So Anna Wilson, I mean, obviously Omaha was being built. It was, a rowdy town and construction and all that, the Jobbers Canyon and the trade and everything was going on. And it was probably would have been very profitable regardless, but she was more than just a madam. She really was a very successful businesswoman, wasn't she?
She really was. And yes, did her books and accounted for things and very talented that way. So,
and she had a boyfriend.
She did. His name was Dan Allen, and he was a gambler. Of course. What else would he be? He was a gambler, and they had a very strong relationship. Of course, they never married, but I think, oh my gosh, I might get my history wrong, but I think he passed away first, and he was buried at Prospect Hill, and then when she passed away, she was buried next to him, and people in Omaha were very upset that this madam was buried at Prospect Hill with her gambler boyfriend. So actually, the people that decided to have her buried there in this plot that she owned, because like I said, she was a benefactor of Prospect Hill and many other places, decided to cover their burial place with a marble slab so that it couldn't be dug up by the townspeople that were up.
Not just a marble slab, but it's a marble slab that is reminiscent of a four-poster bed.
Well, they say it's the size of a four-poster bed. That's rumored. I can't substantiate that. I just know that it's a very large slab where two people are lying side by side underneath it.
And the word on that was because she donated, as I understand it, she donated $1 million to the city, and turned her brothel into the first communicable disease hospital in Omaha, but there was a condition that the city gets the money, but the condition was what?
Well, that the statues be removed. I'm not sure which.
Oh no, okay. The condition I heard at least was that they be buried under 6 feet of concrete, so that the good women of Omaha couldn't dig up their graves.
Well, so that's the marble slab that we're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the conditions for the donation.
That's right.
She turned this into a hospital for the city of Omaha.
Once the nude ladies were removed.
And oddly enough, it was for communicable diseases, which, I mean, what might you find at a brothel? I don't know. So that, and you say that, that's what the rumor is, and rumors and that. So there are, some of this is all folklore and that.
Yeah.
Including the grave that is sort of catty-corner to Anna Wilson and Dan Allen's of the state senator.
Oh.
Right? Okay, so...
Yeah, you told me this story when you were at the cemetery.
Really, this is what I heard at least. And I forget the senator's name. But next to it, there's a tall pillar with the senator looking over Anna Wilson's grave. Now, the G-rated version is that he was a state senator, so he's looking towards Lincoln. That's the G-rated version. The PG-13 or R-rated version is that he was a regular customer of Anna Wilson's, and so he's looking over her grave. I prefer to go with I like that story better.
So the story that I've heard is a different one, because he was a state senator and he had farmland, and he was overlooking the farmland that was outside of Omaha to the southwest.
Of course, if you were checking out the graveside of the madam, you'd probably tell your wife, "No, honey, I'm really looking over I'm checking out the farm. Yeah, I want to make sure the cows are okay. Yeah."
I'm not going to comment on that.
So it is. I mean, and there's just countless stories like that.
That's right.
And you say there are guided tours, right? You can do a walking tour of the cemetery.
You can do your own walking tour, and we're open from 8 in the morning until sunset every night. And people love actually just driving through. First of all, it's interesting. They drive through, and the cemetery is built on a hub and spoke design. So in the middle of the cemetery, we have a big flagpole, and there are spokes coming out from that middle of roads. Some of them are closed, but most of them are gravel roads that are open. So you can drive down a road and just very slowly look out at the gravestones that have some of these prominent names. Get out of your car, you see a brown box, you walk over to the brown box, read about that prominent person that's buried there. And then people always inevitably come back and say, "Oh, I didn't see it all."
Yeah.
So then they come back and they get out of their car then and they walk the cemetery. And it's a beautiful walk on a beautiful day. There's plenty of trees and shade. And it's a lovely way to spend a couple of hours in history.
What is the appeal? Like I mentioned, I enjoy going to the grave sites and cemeteries. But what is the appeal for the person that comes to, visit Prospect Hill that doesn't have family members there or whatever? Is there a certain appeal to the just going to a cemetery?
So, a lot of people come for a lot of different reasons. It's really interesting. Some people come because they want to see a haunted cemetery. It's a cemetery, it must be haunted. There are all sorts of stories that I've never really bought into about people seeing people walking around and things like that. So, people come to cemeteries for that supernatural kind of feeling. I personally love cemeteries for the feeling I get of history. I have to look at a gravestone that says, 18 they were born in 1815. Oh my gosh. Or died in 1870. What was Omaha like in 1870? How did they die? What's the story behind that? And at Prospect Hill, you just are immersed in that. It's everywhere you look, all 13 acres.
Do you do anything special? I know you do a special event for Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
I was there this past year for that. Do you do anything special for like for Halloween or for other special, like 4th of July or other special occasions?
We're not really equipped at this point to have events. We hope to once we do our full battery of improvements. So Memorial Day is really the main fundraising event that we do every year. But people are welcome to come there and have a picnic or, use the roads. We're actually putting in walking trails along those roads so that they will be pedestrian friendly. We have a lot of improvements coming up, Tom.
Let's talk about that because, you need donations. Right? You need donations. You're a 501c3, right?
Correct.
So you can make a charitable donation, write it off your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
How do people find out more about this? How do they, if they want to donate, how would they go about doing that?
So our website's the best way. There's a donation button right there at the website. All sorts of different tabs that you can go on to find out our history, to get a walking tour, to actually research if your family might be there. Lots of different areas on that website, but how to donate is a really good way. And we need financial donations, but we also need volunteers. We have no paid staff at all. Our board of trustees is made up of 12 volunteers, some of whom work full-time like I do, and do it because of the love that they have for what the cemetery symbolizes, the history of Omaha right before your eyes. But to get back to what you said, the financial donations are something we have to rely on from the general public. And people generally do fall in love with the cemetery when they come to visit or when they come to work as weed workers, what we call some of our Saturday volunteers, Saturday and Sunday volunteers through the spring and summer. And they just fall in love with the cemetery and they want to give back. And we appreciate that.
What is the web address?
So it is prospecthillomaha.org.
prospecthillomaha.org. Easy enough to remember and you can make a donation. You can find out more about who's all buried there, find out more about what Prospect Hill was and what it is and what it's going to be. And I invite you to go and check that out. I'll tell you, like I said, I'm a big history buff. And it frustrates me a little bit. And I'll get on the soapbox here for a second. It frustrates me a little bit. We've got so many famous people that have either achieved their fame here in Omaha or have moved on, and whether it be Marlon Brando, Henry Fonda, go down the list, Johnny Carson, go down the list of all these people. And we do so little to celebrate that. I mean, I know the Durham is there and they do some stuff, but if you think about it, I would just like to see more, and also more to maybe elaborate a little bit and sort of enhance the impression of the Wild West days here, or what this place must have been like. You talked about, what the city was like in 1870. I'm sure the roads were just as bad then too.
Yeah, they were muddy, a lot of them.
and that, but But what it was, this was a railroad town. This was,
That's right.
And you mentioned Abe Lincoln's bodyguard is buried there. Well, Abe Lincoln has a big connection, mostly with Council Bluffs, but also, through that Omaha area. So there's so much history here that I sometimes wish we did more to embrace that as a city.
Yep, I do too. And I like to say that really the history of the city starts at Prospect Hill. Because it really, really does. Like I said, the first person to cross the river and establish a home is buried there. It's an amazing place, and if anybody is at all interested in Omaha history, it's a place where you start, right there on 33rd and Parker, and like you started to say, we're going to have a new look. We already have taken down that horrible chain link fence that I referred to. Anybody that visited us on Memorial Day saw a beautiful fence that we've put along Parker and along 33rd Street. That's a beautiful black aluminum fence with brick columns, and this is all part of a grant that we received. It's part of the NSORG grant, the North and South Omaha redevelopment, and we were lucky enough to get about an $850,000 grant. So
nice.
We are improving. That's our first thing, was our fence. Like I said, we're improving the roads and making actual walkways so people can come into the cemetery, have a real pathway that if they want to get fit, they can certainly do that. But if they want to just roam around and, find out history, we're going to have new signage. Those little brown boxes are all going to go away. The signage is going to be metal and very weatherproof and have QR codes on them so that you can go to a QR code and read about that person even more in depth than is on the sign. We're going to hopefully at some point redo the 120-year-old house that sits on the property, which needs a lot of repair. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. Perhaps a research center for genealogy, perhaps an Omaha History Research Center. If your family's buried there, come and learn about your family, that kind of thing.
And again, the web address is prospecthillomaha.org. And you can find out all about this. You need money and you need volunteers.
That's exactly right.
And it really is. Again, as a person that I'm just fascinated by this sort of stuff, I'm fascinated by the history of Omaha. And so much of the history of Omaha is right there at 33rd and Parker.
That's right.
All right. Which is, again, right by where Malcolm X was born. And then also, if you just take 30th Street further up north, there's the Mormon Cemetery. So there's a lot of history in that general area.
Right. Parker's actually only about a quarter mile from Cumming. It's very, very, very close to 30th and Cumming. So.
Is Cumming buried there too?
Yes, actually.
If there's
another
a
street there.
street in Omaha, now there's no 72nd guy buried there, but overall, if there's a street in Omaha, good chance they're buried there at Prospect Hill. I'll tell you, Barb, thank you very much. I like I said, I find this sort of thing fascinating. I appreciate
Great.
your time, and go to the website, make a donation, and volunteer your time if you can, and help them out. In the meantime, make sure you also spend some time at Havana Garage in the Old Market. I want to thank them for their support. Also want to say, check out the Becca's Talking Facebook page. Subscribe, be a subscriber to the Becca's Talking YouTube channel, and help please spread the word, because every week there's something new, something different, something, just another story to tell. And I'm enjoying this. I hope you are too. Thanks a lot for spreading the word and joining us. Till next time, take care, and bye, y'all.